Shalom and welcome with Windornowski. You may wonder why I come up with a message about Succoth when we are almost at the end of it. Well, if you listen to the end of this relatively long message, you will know. I'm not discussing how to transliterate it correctly. I leave it up to the religious camp. Some write it with C or two C's, others with one K or two Ks, and with or without a H at the end. But it doesn't matter to me. Typically translated also as the Feast of Tabernacles, or you just use the Hebrew letters Succoth, Vav, Tav, or the numbers 15, 11, 6, and 22. But I'll leave it up to you if you like to discover the meaning of each letter and whatever details. Basically, the Feast of Succoth is the celebration by dwelling in a sukkah with joy and happiness, commemorating the sheltering when the children of Israel traveled from Egypt to the Promised Land. So by dwelling in a sukkah, or some kind of a tent, we expose ourselves to the elements of nature. I have been camping a lot in my life, also as a child, because my parents camped often, and I like it. But of course, never done it for 40 years. And even if I would start now, there's not enough time left, and I'm anyway in the wrong region. Not much desert here. Some sand at the children's playgrounds, in hardware stores, or at a few beaches in a bit distance, but that's it. So we are heading now towards the end of the feast, depends on how we count. But as I prayed and meditated during these days about the children in Israel, roaming around 40 years in the wilderness, there were a few things that drew my attention. I want to share some of them. The entire story of their journey is pretty long. When we start at a point after Pharaoh and his army drowned, so it covers the book of Exodus, chapter 16, after the Song of Moshe, and goes all the way into the book of Yehoshua, when they finally entered literally and physically the Promised Land. To read everything takes a while. But if we leave out all the details, with all the laws and construction of the tabernacle, the genealogy, and so on, it's not really so much anymore. Some people might be able to get through it within some hours, and slow readers like me may need a week or two. When I was young, I thought a 40-year journey in the wilderness sounds very arduous. Hiking for a month is hard enough. But reading into the story, I realized most of the time they were just staying at certain locations for a short or a longer period of time, and effectively didn't walk around every day, but all in all, just maybe a month or two. If they would have gone directly into the Promised Land, the shortest way, it would have taken them less than 2 weeks. But life is not always covered with shortcuts, this we know. At least from my experience. I don't know yours. When I think about my own walk in faith, and I'm already on the way more than 40 years, but I've still not entered the Promised Land. But actually, the most I'm wondering why I'm still on a narrow path. A lot of my former friends who walked the path once turned away into the wide road of worldly pleasures that leads to destruction. Yeah, very sad, very bad and sad situation where I wish they all would have make it back to the narrow path. I don't have all the information. I'm not in touch with most of them anymore. But terribly to think how many may have died in the wilderness of corruption. When I see how the world have turned into madness, there's hardly a day that I don't cry out of my increasing desire to enter the final Promised Land. Whether we name it paradise or heaven. Only to think about the changes in this world the past 40 years from 1985 till today is crazy. We are already past 1984. Look now, surveillance everywhere, mass migration with illegals and criminals, and the internet and its addictions, the sky with all the mysterious trails, food poisoning, police violence, riots, corporation corruption, climate hysteria, and now AI-generated propaganda, where you don't know anymore what is real and what's not. and so much more. Yes, we had dictatorships before, Honecker or Ceausescu, for example, communism in the Eastern European countries, and so on. But one of the worst is the mainstream media, the perpetual liars, which was just not that obvious in the past 40 years. Since 2020, we know how the cabal, deep state, globalist elites, or whatever you name them, are in control of literally almost every aspect of life. And there's hardly any escape from their insanity. Often I think 40 years back, and from there another 40 years in the past, when most Central Europe, and especially Germany, was in rubble. And there, knowing my dad experienced all of it, makes me wonder when I hear the politicians today utter the same words and phrases Stalin or Hitler used. Today, just camouflaged for the population to believe we live in a democracy. Nazis, socialists, Marxists, and communists never left. Well, it can't be, because all of this, it's not a person, but a system created in the pit of hell. Only one thing is sure, there will not be another 40 years before we will be heading into the Great Tribulation and the millennial season. Nevertheless, there are some thoughts that came to me about the children of Israel in the wilderness. So reading through the chapters, it looks like, oh man, they were complaining and rebelling all the time. I don't know how often, someone surely has counted the amount of how often they complained. But I realized in my prayer, reading through it within a week or two is one thing, but it's a story that is stretched over a period of 40 years. And then it looks to me, that's not a lot of complaints. I don't know about you, but I think sometimes I complained more within 1 year than the Israelite during the span of 40 years. At least the things that are written down. And I think I also built a lot of golden altars, not physically, but sometimes in thoughts. You possibly know such things. Oh, if I would be a millionaire or a billionaire. Da 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 da. Looking back my past 40 years in faith, I better don't count my complaints. Yeshua knows it's anyway. I can only ask him to forgive my transgressions. Okay, there are some known and some unknown factors in all of it. The children of Israel in Egypt definitely had a legitimate reason to cry out for being rescued out of slavery. And then they have seen all the incredible miracles, starting with the plagues and then the drowning of Pharaoh and his army, the parting of the sea, before they even went on their journey. And after all of it, we wonder why did they still not trust but complained so strongly. Then the punishment were no other who came out of Egypt except Yehoshua and Caleb made it all the way to the promised land. A horrible scenario after all the joy at the beginning. Why was Adonai so harsh and strict? Well, the unknown factor, how much did they complain and rebel, which is not written in Scripture? And how much their general attitude counted into the equation. Being provided with manna, and though it was sometimes at the last minute also the supply of water, and this for millions of people, including all their cattle, how can it be ignored? Of course, we look at it from a complete different perspective. Being in that situation is another story than just to watch it through a distant lens by reading the entire adventure peacefully on our couch or chair. Okay, there's also a lot to complain today. Wicked leaders have taken over and work hard to finish their desire to destroy the world. Many might ask and complain, where is God and why does he not intervene regardless how hard we cry or pray? But then I look and see how godless nearly all nations have become. I'm not wondering. The Lord hath not spared Sodom and Gomorrah. Why shall he now? He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Perversion, at least in most Western countries, have become totally rampant. Surely we don't know many puppet players, especially the main figures in the background. Only most public psychopaths are pretty easy to discover, but yet many people are still blind and couldn't see or believe, and more so then they don't turn their hearts to follow Yeshua. We could also complain why God allow Africa to be plundered of their wealth by wicked corporations. Billions above billions of profit, and most people in Africa live in poverty. Gold, diamonds, oil, uranium, cobalt, and all sorts of natural resources shoveled into Western nations while nothing is left for the people in Africa. They could complain and ask Yeshua, where is justice? But do they send their cry to the real God, the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Or do they run after idols and witchcraft? I don't know all the details, I'm just saying, complaints. They have legitimate reasons. We can further complain why many of our friends and relatives were blind and took the poisonous injection, even after they have been warned. And many of them still don't respond after their health got compromised. How does complaints work when many of them having now health issues? And the most important question, why are most friends and relatives not yet saved even after hundreds of hours by our prayers for their souls? I leave the answer up to you. Anyway, the list goes on, and we think the Israelites rebelled a lot. But are we truly so much different? Look into the mirror and truly examine yourself honestly. So I don't know how manna really tasted, though I'm sure all nutritions like minerals, proteins, vitamins, and whatever stuff must have been in there. But if it would have tasted like my favorite dish, I surely would not complain. I would rather spend an hour every day to pick it up than to go once a week into a supermarket to buy stuff with ingredients lists that makes one dizzy just by reading, and no one knows what it is. And above all that, who knows if there is something in the food that is even not listed. So with free manna from heaven, I even don't need to work to earn the money which I need to buy the food. Okay, if I could decide, I would more love to have a little farm where I can grow my own food, where I know what it is. And I would rather spend hours to cultivate it than to buy crap. Of course, with divine protection from all chemicals that's in the sky and the water. But now, more personally, how would it be to reduce complaining and live more in thanksgiving, regardless the countless reasons we could have to complain? Adonai provided the people in the wilderness with shelter, food, and water, and additionally, tents and clothes didn't wear out all the 40 years. Though I need to say quality in old days was much better. But that's not desired in this world of consumption for profit. I have been hiking in the desert in August, so I know it's definitely not pleasant. All the dust, heat, and some sort of boredom. But I experienced there even a small miracle. It was not life-threatening, but I was almost out of water. And then I crossed the only road on my journey, and the only one car that passed by stopped and asked me if this is the correct road or the correct direction to Arad. Then out of the blue, they gave me a 2-liter bottle of water, not knowing I was very low on water. So I had enough to be refreshed for the final 10 kilometers of my hike. Let Succoth also be a reminder of God's miracles in our lives, whether small or big, and don't forget. And for those who are saved by the blood of the Lamb, don't forget how He brought us out of slavery and is heading with us to the final promised land. I can't say if we have only a few hours, days, weeks, months, or some years to go, but whatever happened, at least I tried to reduce my rebellion. Possibly you will still find me here and there in some sort of complaints. I'm still a human. Just a story that reminds me when we need a lot of faith to continue our journey in this world, as I had to go shopping for building material lately, and as usual, I pay everything with cash as long as possible. I entered a bit a surprise because the shop only accepts cash up till 699 euros, while the sum was higher. I didn't knew that, but luckily the clerk could cut the bill in two, so I could get all of my stuff. But it gave me a hint that one day we may not be able to pay cash anymore. And one day, if we don't fly home before, we can decide to dance around the final ultimate golden calf, basically taking the mark of the beast and be lost forever, or trust that Yud-Heh-Wav-Heh will provide. Okay, building material is not essential, but it could happen in grocery stores as well, and it can be sooner than we like. So let us be thankful and more so trust that Adonai will provide as long until our individual days are numbered. Do we fear the modern giants mostly dressed in suit and tie, who are protected somehow by brainless order followers? Or do we believe like Yehoshua, Caleb, or King David that they are just uncircumcised fools who serve a loser, the one who got crushed by Yeshua at the cross? Rejoice when they persecute you for the sake of Yeshua and his name. Great will be your reward in the kingdom of heaven. We know our promised land. There we will be for all eternity. These wicked individuals who call themselves the elites have no clue where they will end. In their blindness by greed and pride, they just stumble around seeking to gain the world until the day when they will die and stand before the King of Kings. They fear death, and their lost soul knows it deep inside. Then, after their body dies, awaits their second death, which is the real one. All who are washed by the blood of the Lamb and born again can rejoice when our body passes and turn back to dust, and then stand before our beloved Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach, and then never see any death anymore in our eternal promised land. Yeshua said he will prepare a place for us. That's a bulletproof promise. I look forward to see you on the streets of gold, even if you don't know really how our real home will look like. But I am certain it will be more than only overflowing with milk and honey, but beyond our expectation and imagination. Succoth, let Yeshua be our Sukkah. Remain under the shelter of the Most High, where Yeshua is the highest, and there's no name above. When the world goes down the drain, we go up. We have a destination, the promised land, the eternal paradise, and eternal Sukkah. So I hope it was not too long, and I welcome you to watch my next video coming soon. But more I will rejoice to see you one day in the air, or on the streets of gold, or the wonderful pastures in the garden in paradise that will be greener than green, and colors we never seen before. Be mightily blessed, and Adonai be with you. Shalom, shalom.